That's what we do, we steal children.
Yeah. Still do it?
Yes. Look here, I've got 200 round me. I'll give you a few if you want some.
Should play with the gypsies in the wood. If I did, she would say, naughty little girl to disobey.
If you go down in the Hertfordshire woods, you could be in for a shock. A gypsy family living as gypsies have done for 500 years in a tent, if you can find them.
Why live in a tent rather than a caravan?
Well, it's what you can afford, isn't it? I mean, you have what you can afford. If you can't afford a caravan, well, you don't have it. And if you can, well, you have it.
I know the countryside, don't I? See more of my life this way.
What sort of things?
Well, in the springtime you see, well, summertime you see pretty flowers, you can move about and you get all the sun. Which if you was an house, you wouldn't, would you?
To most of us, there's something of a romantic myth about the raggle-taggle gypsies, living carefree as they do, and there's something to envy too in their avoidance of numbing routine, the taxman, and the everyday hassles of ordinary folk. And because they do live outside our normal lives, there's something unknown to fear as well. They foretell the future, don't they? And they have the power to curse.
I think one of the most famous ones recently was Prince Nathaniel Petulengro Lee, who is presumed reputed to have cursed one of the local councils in his area, and they backed down and are quite frightened. I mean, I think he got what he wanted.
It's a nice power to have, that.
It is, if you really have it.
It could have been a faulty electric wire or a cigarette end that set fire to Alexandra Palace earlier this year, except that in the old days, the field where Alexandra Palace was built was a traditional gypsies' stopping place.
It's been an old belief among the non-gypsy community, that if a gypsy curses them, then this will happen. I don't believe there's any real basis for it, apart from the fact that this has been passed on, you know. Same as the old gypsy romantic stories have been passed on, same as it is with the gypsy curse. It is illegal, of course, to curse somebody now.
Most of us only ever see gypsies parked on the roadside, hopefully not stopping anywhere near where we live. They're different from us, their rules are different. They may not steal our children anymore, but they'll steal anything else, won't they?
Well, I'd be foolish to turn around and say that if somebody had a car and we wanted it, but to take it and say, well, we're entitled to it or anything like this, or to go into somebody's house and steal, or anything like that would be wrong. But the things which are hereditary, free, fish, air, water, then we feel that we have a right, as much right to anybody else, and they have no right to try and, you know, keep it. Nobody's a right to monopolise it, let's put it that way.
But if we are wary of gypsies, they suspect and fear us. Mutual suspicion, hostility, violence. A battle I reported on for Man Alive 12 years ago in the West Midlands. 9 o'clock on a winter's morning in Walsall, a group of 8 gypsy caravans is to be moved off a council lorry park. They stopped there in desperation a week ago after being turned off every other piece of waste ground in the area. Today marks the end of a week of negotiations between the Gypsy Council and the Town Council.
It is in fact illegal for the gypsies to be on this ground, but isn't it equally illegal to move caravans that have people in them? Aren't you in fact breaking the law as much as they are?
It is illegal to move them with people in.
But you're doing that?
Well, yes, because the gypsies are in effect saying to us, you can't move us, we are going to keep people in. We give them the opportunity to get the people out before we move them.
Johnny, what are they going to do if they're not going to be able to move the caravans that have got the children in?
We're going to order to move them. Hang on.
From who? From who?
With the kids in.
You've got orders to move them with the kids in. From who? Who gave you the order?
Legal department, our legal department.
In the past, these gypsies have used their fists, pickaxe handles and crowbars to keep the council men at bay. This time they tried a new weapon, the law. They discovered it's illegal to tow a caravan with people in it. Even so, 2 caravans are towed off. First blood to the council. They're taken from the lorry park and left in a side road where the police can take action if they wish to charge the gypsies with obstruction. The gypsies take measures to strengthen their position, order their children to sit on the caravan tow bars. Anyone who touches the children will be guilty of assault. They also light fires in the caravans. 3 children died in a caravan fire just before Christmas. Now no one wants to tow away a van with an opened fire and children in it. The gypsies won that battle, but they lost a lot more. Everything should have changed in the last 12 years, but not much has. Hitler's solution to the gypsy problem was simple: concentration camps. Ours was different: the 1968 Caravan Sites Act. It hasn't worked. The purpose of the 1968 Act was to provide sites for gypsies. At the time, it was thought there were 15,000 of them. That figure was wrong. Today, it's thought there are 50,000, and that's probably wrong too. And after 12 years of the Act, there are only 179 sites like this, enough for only a quarter of all the gypsies there are. Oxney Road site in Peterborough isn't typical. Most sites have nowhere for visiting relatives to park, nowhere to work, nowhere for the children to play. Badly sited, often worse planned, adding to rather than diminishing the gypsies' problems. Peter Mercer is secretary of the East Anglian Gypsy Council, not a do-gooder, a self-educated gypsy.
If you're at the side of the road in a small encampment, then you have the social structure where everybody mixes. You have the fire outside, you do your cooking outside. You come on a place like this and you can't do no cooking outside, you're not allowed to light a fire. And so therefore you get a sense of, it's like moving from a terraced house into a, shall we say, into a block of flats where everybody complaining. The fact is that once they move from the terraced houses, they lose all their comradeship and friendliness, and families tend to be alienated from each other.
Every proposed new gypsy site is opposed with an intensity that verges on the hysterical. There are no votes in gypsies, so county and local councillors, faced with a statutory obligation to provide sites, have put them near sewage works, near rubbish dumps, near motorways, anywhere no one else would live. And the sites themselves aren't what the gypsies wanted, because nobody thought to ask them what they did want.
What do the gypsies actually want?
The million-dollar question. Each gypsy is representative of himself. The 2 or 3 organisations that we speak to want primarily 2 things. Half want the open space site with just basically a tap and skip and a freedom to come and go with little or no rent and restrictions. The other, which Oxney Road is now perhaps a fairly good example, is a fairly regimented site where they have got security, where they have all the facilities, and they are prepared to pay the rent for it. But there is a clear diversion of really 2 sides, that want a fixed site and the other that wants much more purely an open stopping place.
What do you find your main problem is in dealing with the gypsies?
Trust, I think, on both sides. They've had many years of being harassed, and they are wary, very wary of local authorities and their officers. We, in turn, because they are a minority people and have reputed to have caused trouble, are equally wary of them. It's a lack of understanding on both sides.
In many places, like East Anglia, prejudice against the gypsies is intense. The Race Relations Board would have something to say if any pub said no blacks. For the gypsies, deafening silence.
The landlord in the Red Lion didn't want to be interviewed, but he told us that if a gypsy went in there, he'd serve him, and he would simply turn out anybody who was causing trouble, whether they were gypsy or not.
Well, I've been in there and been refused service in the past. This is quite a few months ago. I will accept that maybe it's a new landlord since then, but it's obvious by the sign on the front of the wall what the intentions of the pub is.
He says that he's only been there a few months and that the sign was there when he came and he just left it there.
Well, he has every opportunity to take it down. It's not in fashion to have a board of that kind on the wall. Throughout the whole area of Finland, they're very common indeed.
Obviously, landlords must feel they have good reason for refusing to serve travellers. I mean, in fact, aren't travellers their own worst enemy in as much as they do tend to drink too much, do tend to get obstreperous?
No, I don't accept that. You see, with every community, and that's with the settled community as well as the travelling community, if a man causes trouble and is part of a crowd and causes trouble, then by all means evict him. But to pick on a group of people and say, right, we won't have any of that group in the public house, this is wrong.
Gypsies are commonly accused of being dirty, light-fingered, sometimes frightening, often causing a nuisance pestering for water. Peter Mercer lives on a site, but there are so few sites that most gypsies break the law every night when they stop. And the old traditional gypsy stopping places are disappearing, as in Peterborough, drowned by new housing developments.
All this area at one time, the Ortons, used to be traditional stopping places for gypsy people in Peterborough, whereas you see it's all been built on, and slowly but surely we're being pushed out. There's some families can remember when all this was green fields and the odd farmhouse, and where they used to stop and where their children were brought up. But now, of course, development takes place over gypsy people.
There are thought to be 100 gypsy families around Peterborough. There's one site for 26, this at Paston Ridings, with space for perhaps another 50. Except that this one is unmanaged. The gypsies haven't done much to improve it. Now it's the sort of place that confirms all the worst suspicions about their habits.
Obviously, with it being an official stopping place, you have people going and coming, and the result being that quite a few of them do leave rubbish behind, which gives the regular residents a bad name, and people seeing only, shall we say, see this from the road, they think that all gypsy people are the same, and that they leave rubbish and for other people to clean up after them. Quite a few of our community are dealers, general dealers, such as horse dealers and motor dealers and this type of thing. The majority of the scrap metal you see laying around is not dirt or rubbish, it's actual people's living. We collect scrap and rags and such things as this, and which were then recycled into new steel and such things as this. So we're quite wrong when they say quite a few things about us, that we are parasites and other things like this.
Lack of stopping places and sites means, inevitably, illegal sites.
Well, this is a site that's been set up because the Paston Riding site isn't fit to live on. They're hoping to stop in here for at least a few weeks before they're evicted.
Worshipful the Mayor of the City of Cambridge does strictly charge and command all manner of persons to keep...
The Midsummer Fair at Cambridge. The gypsies claim it used to be theirs. Nowadays, they are segregated. Their camp 2 miles away in a meadow.
God save the Queen! Oh yes! Oh yes! Oh yes!
By the right worshipful Mayor of Cambridge and Chief Governor of this fair, doth strictly charge and command all merchants and other persons that be repaired or shall repair to this fair here holden this day, to keep Her Majesty's peace, that all idle and evil disposed persons within this fair do depart out of the same forthwith after this proclamation, upon pain of imprisonment and such other punishment as by the laws of this land may be inflicted upon them.
I know I shouldn't say that, but I'm not regret to say that. I thought it was only me.
For councillors and local dignitaries, gypsies are a nuisance, an irritation that nags like a toothache and can't be cured with an aspirin. And yet, with all our fancy dress of respectability, we are equally an irritation and a nuisance to them. You don't often see many gypsies gathered together. By nature, they're a nomadic and solitary breed. For them, fairs like Cambridge are a holiday, a place where gypsies gather from all over the country. They'll pay the £20 a week to camp for the pleasure of getting together. Didecoys, mumpers, Irish tinkers, gypsies, all travellers, all different. Some rich, making small fortunes out of tarmacking and scrap dealing. Others earning a comfortable living out of seasonal farm work and a bit of dealing. A few, today very few, scraping by on the traditional gypsy crafts of peg making and knife grinding.
It's like in ordinary society where you have your poor person, you have your middle class and your upper class. We tend to call them rich gypsies or flash gypsies and this type of thing. In the English gypsy range, you've got the different groups. You've got what we call the Romani group, dark-skinned and black-haired, and quite a few of them think they're the last gypsy, you know, remaining, or their families. And of course then you've got your other group, probably brought up from the Manus groups and the Yenish and Sinti, which, you know, sprang from the continent. One has to remember that originally there was no gypsies in England. They all came over from the continent during the migration. The Irish tinkers are a group who tend to stick on their own. They're very much maligned, unfortunately. Not only do they get it in the neck from local councils and other people in local authorities, they also, in a lot of cases, they find that the English gypsy people are against them. But I feel they're just as important in the structure as the English traveller is.
Where's its yolks?
Dog.
Where's its yolks?
Yeah.
Where's its knock? Where's its moy?
Where's its moy?
Peter Mercer and his wife Ruth have a different language, a different culture. Not better or worse than ours, just different.
Where's its moy? Where's Mummy's moy?
Mine.
Where's Mummy's nut?
It's traditionally a secret language, and therefore we have to pass it on from father to son or daughter.
She said it was.
At this stage, obviously, I'm just teaching the basic Romani words to Shemaine, such as the yoks for eyes, moi for mouth, vast for the hands, bal for the air.
Shemaine?
Toad.
Toad. You want some toad?
When we're talking to Pakistani people and we use certain of our words, they're very similar, such as chai, that's tea, pani is water. If you want to ask somebody if they want a cup of tea, you say mango's chai, or for milk, you say mango's tud. Do you want milk or do you want tea? And it's very, very similar to the Indian dialects.
Oh. Yeah, come and sit up here then.
In popular song and legend, gypsies may be feckless and carefree, but in reality, they're the last of the Victorians, and little has changed since the teenage days of Dora Stanley.
Although we got married when we were very young, until we made up our mind that the boy we wanted, we wasn't allowed to go with any boy, you know, just anyone.
Not at all?
No.
So how did you decide who you thought you wanted to marry?
Well, probably it was a boy that we've grown up more or less with, you know, travelled about and then just sort of met him and then waited to see him again at the fair or somewhere like that, you know. And just got stuck on one other, I expect, that's what you call it.
Were you allowed to go out for walks and things together? Or?
Oh, no. No, that wasn't allowed, you know. If our mothers ever thought that we, or fathers ever thought that we had such intentions in our mind, we'd end up with a good hiding.
You ever get a hiding?
Yes, many a time. Didn't hurt me, though.
So how did you do your courting if you weren't even allowed to go out for walks?
Oh, we'd probably, you know, boys and girls in my day, we'd make old fires outside, you know, we'd probably go for stick and meet one another early in the morning or, you know, just get a bundle of stick and just talk together, just like children, you know. We wasn't taught anything, you know, we didn't know anything. What we knew, we learnt ourselves, sort of thing, you know.
What happens if a gypsy girl, say, really goes astray and finishes up getting pregnant?
Well, we try to look after her, but if it's a boy that's been fetched up, you know, as well as he should be, then he takes the responsibility. Otherwise, the family looks after their own problems. You know, the mother and father never abandons the girl, never kicks them out. Like if she has a baby or anything, we have the baby and we look after the baby and we fetch it up and love it as much as we love our own daughters.
The morality as strict and as necessary as that of any beleaguered nomadic minority. But they tell fortunes, they're astrologers, are mystical, often deeply religious too.
Don't do that.
Well, look, we might look barbaric, is the word. I can't pronounce these fancy words you keep telling me. We might look mad, you know, wild. But deep down in every one of them, there's only one God. And the word for it is money. But yeah, they are religious, a lot of them. Some make out not to be, but they are.
Is going to church part of a gypsy's religion?
No, only church is in your mind, isn't it? That's the best church of the lot.
We've lost, shall we say, language and quite a few of our small, shall we say, customs of marriage and things like this. Whereas the gypsy people abroad have kept them. You know, this is where there's a difference.
What do you think you're losing in the way of gypsy marriages, for instance?
Well, it's hard to describe. I, for one, don't accept that the old marriage over the broomstick was exactly as people used to say it was, or as our parents used to say it was.
What was it supposed to be like? I've heard this expression. I've never known what it meant over the broomstick. What happened?
Well, one, in some cases, you see, basically gypsies are made up into tribes, and you have each tribe will follow a different custom. There was some cases to jump besom broom, and then the others would jump the fire, this type of thing, and this was to solemnise a marriage. But a lot of this is, shall we say, in romantic folklore, and quite a bit of it isn't to be, you know, accepted as gospel.
But are there still traditional gypsy weddings which have nothing to do with ordinary household society?
No, not really, not in England. I've never come across it in the sense of among our own community. You do, of course, with the foreign tribes of gypsy people, such as Lavari and Calderash and others, where they have very, very strong, shall we say, wedding traditions of giving of money and this type of thing. I think the English gypsy way of life has got so gorgified now that one more or less follows it.
What's gorgified?
That's a non-gypsy. When you say somebody's gorgified or like a gorge, it means they're like a non-gypsy or living like a non-gypsy.
And what about the old traditional gypsy funeral? The old custom of burning the caravan?
In today's prices, inflation this time, you just can't afford to burn the caravan. But the tendency now is to sell the caravan. Now, when you come to the lorry or the vehicle used by the person who's died for work, then that's a different matter. That is nearly always destroyed.
Off a back road, along a lane, down a track, and back to the very roots of the gypsies, a family who live in a tent, anachronistically, with a car battery for the television set and record player. Violet Smith married her husband, Bill Parker, under Romany law 50 years ago, and they kept their own names. They may be the last gypsy family in this country to live like this. She still makes pegs, he was a knife grinder. In our eyes, they might seem depressingly poor, but they've lived in this sort of way all their lives, as did their parents, grandparents and great-grandparents, and they've bred and raised 6 children.
What happened? Did you have a midwife come to you, or a doctor come to you, or did anybody help you?
No.
Nobody helped you at all?
Only my husband's mother.
And she knew enough to...
Oh, yes.
Are there still people like her around?
No.
No?
Not now. Well, there may be one here and there, but very far apart.
It's difficult enough rearing children at the best of times, but imagine bringing up 6 in a tent in the middle of winter.
How did you manage about such things as nappies, for instance?
Well, I'll tell you again, I shouldn't waste money the same as people do now.
What did you do?
Bundles of wool. That's all they are.
What did
you got
use?
some white sheets and cut them up in squares, they answer the same purpose.
What about feeding them? Once they'd been weaned, then how did you feed them? Because presumably you didn't buy little tins of baby food that everybody buys nowadays.
No, we used to boil bread. Stale bread.
With milk?
Yeah.
And then when they got on to slightly more complicated things, because did you have a thing like a mincing machine, for instance, so you could...
We fed them myself. They had the same as we had.
Were they ever ill?
Oh.
No? And did anybody ever come round to see that they were all right? No.
We know they was all right. Don't worry about that.
When the children got a bit older, when they got to 5 or 6, our house dwellers sigh a deep sigh of relief and send them off to school. You didn't. What did you do with yours?
Never let the children leave us. So funny sending children to school. Probably they wouldn't come back anyway.
What did you teach them to do?
We would teach them to get a living.
What sort of things?
Well, it's a hard thing to say what they could do.
Well, what sort of things did you teach them to do?
Well, I tried to teach them to make pegs, but they run out of it. They learnt, but they left, you know, and they sort of give it up.
Their youngest daughter, Lily, is 23 now, but she still lives at home to help them.
You live here with your mother and father all the time, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you all manage about sleeping? Your mother and father sleep in a tent. Where do you sleep?
No. Me and my mother sleeps in the tent. My father sleeps in the back of the car.
Always?
Yeah.
What do you do with yourself all day here?
Listen to records.
I noticed a few minutes ago you were looking at the back of the record sleeve. Can you read it all?
Well, a little bit, you know. Sort of a little bit. Spell my name and things like that.
How did you learn to do that?
Well, for record packets.
Really?
And birth certificate.
Even the car and the television set have done little to widen either their boundaries or ambitions. In a corner of the heart of every house dweller, there may be a secret yearning to return to nature. Bill Parker and his family have never left it.
Have you lived all your life, and not just in this particular little spot here, but in this part of England?
Pretty nearly, yeah.
And what makes you move around? How long do you decide whether to stay?
Well, what makes anybody go on holidays now? You ask me why did I move around, why does people go on holidays? It's the same thing.
What's the farthest you've been away from here?
Ooh, I don't know. I can't tell the distance.
Well, people live in houses, go on holidays, and they go to the seaside. Do you go to the seaside when you get bored here?
Well, I could do.
Have you?
On the other hand, I couldn't do. I've been to the seaside, yeah.
Do you like it?
Well, I don't mind it, but I can't see the difference anywhere else.
What do you actually do during the winter, those long days when it rains all day and it's cold?
Keep getting plenty of wood for the fire. Keep yourself warm.
Well, what do you do of an evening? I mean, do you ever go down to the local pub or go out or do anything? What do you do?
Play records or watch telly.
Sounds like every mother's and father's perfect daughter to have at home.
Yes, yeah. Do you ever get ill? Never rare. Yeah? Oh, do you get cold now and again? Anything like that, like?
If you could go back again, would you live in a tent again all through your life? Or?
Oh, yeah, of course I would. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Name me a couple of cold tea.
Lily's parents are both old-age pensioners. Violet Smith is in her late 60s, her husband is 72, and now that they're getting older, they've been put on the local council waiting list, and they'll have to wait their turn for a house because they have no priority.
Do you want to stay here, or would you like to go and live in a house perhaps now you're getting older?
I don't mind.
You wouldn't mind living in a house?
No.
What sort of house would you like to live in?
Well, as long as it was out in a village, I don't mind. But I don't like towns.
Why not?
Too many people. You get on your feet.
A lot of travellers, of course, say they don't like, not only not like towns, they don't like villages, they don't like houses either, because they think that houses are unhealthy.
Well, it all depends which way you look at it, isn't it? If you make yourself miserable, well...
But you wouldn't be miserable in a house?
I don't think so. I can be miserable if I like. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be.
Back in the 20th century, and another surprise, gypsies who can and do afford caravans costing upwards of £16,000. At the big fairs, like Cambridge, the gypsies like to put on a bit of a show, to cut a bit of a dash. They tend to keep cash in their pockets, in wads, to treat caravans, horses, cars, possessions as savings accounts and pension funds. No less logical, really, than a union investing in rare paintings for its members' pensions. Not all the cars are owned, some are hired, and if they don't disappear as tax-deductible business expenses, it's only because most gypsies have never bothered to learn to read or write. They tend not to bother with income tax forms either, another reason for the rest of us to be part jealous, part aggravated. But far more important than possessions, the family. Not the 2-point-something children of the Colour Supplement Society, but 5, 6, 7 or more.
One of the great problems, I would have thought, living in a caravan when there are very often lots of children, 8 or 9 or 10, is for the parents simply to get any privacy to themselves at all.
Well, as a rule, we've always got 2 caravans. One for the mother and father and one for the kids. Well, we call them our kitchens, but really they're, you know, for convenience more than anything, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes if we've got a big family, we'll probably have 3 caravans, you know.
So you wouldn't very often find a case where there was a mother and father and 5 or 6 children all living in just one caravan?
No, that's not very often done. No. Unless it's a real poor family that can't afford any better.
Even young gypsy children have a disconcerting quality of adulthood. But then the tradition is that when they're 11 or so, the boys go out to work with Dad, and the daughters stay back home in the caravan to help Mum. The law is not always as discreet with gypsies as it was at the Cambridge Fair. Those who wanted to were able to gamble freely, even settle differences their own way.
In general, we're not a violent people, but if we do have problems, we sort it out in our own way. We might lead up to a fist fight. It's better than, shall we say, than to try and sort it out somewhere in the dark. It's a lot better to try and sort it out among yourselves and in full view of your own community.
Come on, stand back. Whoa, stand back. Stand back. Stand back. You had enough, mate?
Eye damage.
Is that enough? That's it. Well, mate, you've done well. That's it. Come on. Who's the next spinner?
This, the end of a row that started the night before in a disco.
He's all right. Come, you done all right. You're all right, mate. You go, there's no shame getting beat. That's when they run away. 40 pounds.
Horses are a traditional part of gypsy life. Many gypsies do still deal in horses, and Appleby Horse Fair in Cumbria is another of the traditional gypsy gatherings where, to outsiders, gypsies are as part rumbustious, part threatening as they've always been. But for how much longer? Men like Kevin Price, if not quite a dying breed, feel threatened and beleaguered by our hostility and obstinate refusal to accept the simple truth that gypsies don't want the comforts of our suburban, semi-detached civilization. He hasn't learned to read or write, doesn't particularly want his children to, doesn't really see school and books as a preparation for a meaningful life. What does have meaning is the sense of loyalty towards family, the help that he'll give his sister and her children threatened with eviction from an illegal site. He will resist to the end any pressures to force him onto a legal site, even if there were enough, which there aren't, suspecting that to be the first step towards corralling him in a house and taming him into one of us.
Biggest majority of the people was on the sites, the dead walking about. And when you come around the area and you can't get nowhere to stay, and you go to pull on a site, you get these zombies coming to you. For one day, do your pal and them, and go turn away to forget you used to live on land, like we're living on now. See? That's where all the problems start.
What changes them?
Changes them. Comfort. They're not even used to comfort ever in their lives. A lot of comfort.
It's more often the women than the men who would like to go on sites. It's the women who would like to escape from what they see as the incessant, costly and demeaning harassment by police and officious local authority bureaucrats.
We've stopped on sites now for a long time, for a good few years. But when we was all small, like, we used to move from one piece of ground to another, you know. But when you get moved on, when your family and parents get older, they just don't want to be bothered shifting here and there. They just want a easy life and just settle down. But some people say, why don't you have a house? But it's everybody's going on. We just couldn't live in houses. Them ones just been brought up in houses, yeah. But not everybody's the same, you know.
Could you live in a house?
No, we've lived in a house. We've had a house, but I couldn't live in one. I'd just rather have me trailer and just, I'm happy like I am. I don't owe anybody anything, so we're just happy.
Local education authorities provide a school bus at some of the fairs, not as well attended as they might hope. It's on the subject of education that many gypsy women disagree with their men. Perhaps they see, in a way their menfolk don't want to see, a different future for gypsies, a need for school to prepare for that future.
We want a site for the winter, that's all we do want.
But aren't the sites where you go?
Yeah, but they're all full up. There's 2 sites where we go, but they're all packed.
So what happens?
Well, if we pull on a place to give us court orders and so long to get off in, and sometimes you're dragged off.
And why do you want to get on a site?
So we can send the children to school.
Did you go to school, Miss?
For a short while, not very long.
How short?
I'd say about a fortnight myself. You know, I never had much time to go anyway. There's too many in our family for me to go to school.
Is that why you want your children to go to school?
Yeah, I'd like them to have education, yes.
Why?
Well, something I never had. I mean, I can't read nor write, nothing like that. That's no good, not in this world anyway, not the way things are going today. Children needs it.
Isn't it difficult, though, to be a traveller and have your children go to school?
No, not really. Because nearly everywhere you go, they'll accept them if it's only for a month or a fortnight, most schools.
In time to come, it'll be all factories, won't it, for them to go to work in?
So they won't be travellers like you?
No, they won't have our children. If they want jobs in the winter, they won't give them jobs because they can't read and write.
But they won't be travellers, presumably, will they?
Of course they will. They won't be flatters, will they?
On the Oxney Road site at Peterborough, a school that's an introduction to ordinary school, it does have its own peculiar problems. The children are aged from 4 to 13. Some don't go for more than a fortnight a year.
I said to you which fruits grow in this country. Is it true? Bananas always have to...
For Robbie Britton, who runs it, the real difficulty is bridging the gap between 2 cultures as different as ours and the Gypsies.
Their feelings about people seeing parts of their body, which we would quite freely exhibit in bikini costumes and things, are very inhibited indeed. The parents don't want sex education. They've made that quite clear. And therefore we just have to try and keep away from that subject. I just made a joke and said that my name was Fanny Golightly, my middle name. And this boy was absolutely horrified that my name was Fanny Golightly, so it was disgusting. Well, I kept this up for a joke because I wanted him to think also that Fanny was a woman's name. It was perfectly ordinary. He continued to be disgusted to the extent that when new boys were arriving, he was saying to them in a low voice, "Hey, you know, her name's Fanny Golightly, isn't it disgusting?"
Don't call out Rocky McGuire. Tell me how you meant it. Get a break. Be quiet, everybody. Listen. It says find something in each row of pictures that is out of place. Yeah, that's right. And what about the next row?
Good flowers.
They have very strict rules and regulations, not only in relation to sex, but to childbirth and washing their bodies and having separate bowls for washing their clothing from their bowls in which they wash their dishes.
For gypsies like Ruth Mercer, who's lived in a house and been to school, a real dilemma. A foot in two cultures, wanting the best of both for herself and her daughter.
What would you have liked to have done if perhaps you'd stayed in a house and gone on going to school?
I would have liked to have been a child nurse.
Why didn't you?
Well, we moved back onto the road after my mother died, and it would have been hard to have gone every day for the 3 years training, I think it was. So I never bothered.
What about your little girl, Charmaine? What do you want to have happen to her?
I'd like to make something of herself, I think. I'd like her to be able to either be a secretary or nurse or something like that, that she can say she's done something with her life. I'd like to move back on the road, but I'd also like her to have her education. So if we could settle down on a site or something through the winter and put her into school then, until she got older.
Gypsies who have gone onto sites, many of them for the sake of the children, have given up a lot. They've given up independence, freedom, the uncluttered life of the open road. And what they have not gained is the one thing most of them crave: freedom from harassment.
On occasion, we've had where the police have come onto the ground, shall we say, between 2 or 3 in the morning, where we've had them come around checking vehicles and setting the dogs up, and they in turn wake the children up. They'll come on the ground with maybe about 19 to 20 cars in some cases. We accept that anybody who commits crimes has got to be arrested, but what we don't accept is that everybody else on the ground, the innocent, should be labelled with the guilty, disturbed, and distress caused to children and older people. And then, to be quite honest, this is why we came on the sites, where we could get away from this type of thing of harassment and being pushed about.
Under the 1968 Act, counties had to provide sites and district councils the services. They haven't, and even if they had, gypsies feel their problems wouldn't have been solved. Once local authorities fulfil their statutory obligations, then they have the right to move gypsies on out of their area. Dorset is the first county to have done this.
They say we'll have full facility sites, transit sites and official stopping places, but the time is going to come when local authorities are going to say, if we have to build a site, it's going to be a permanent site and we're not going to have anybody else moving around the area or stopping in the area. So if everybody else gets this idea, which we feel that they will be doing, and then the time will come when there'll be just nobody will be able to move. There'll be enough sites allocated, everybody will be put on these sites, and if, for instance, as I've said many times, if I want to move from here to Doncaster or from here to Leeds or even down to London, I will have to make sure that there's a place available for me at the site I wish to go to. I will then have to approach the police and get permission to move.
One answer, of course, would be for the gypsies to stop being travellers, to stop travelling altogether. Is that a solution that you would like to see?
It's an answer, but I think it will be many, many years. We hope eventually that once they get settled on the site, the next logical step is to get them into housing. It has been our policy that where they have wanted housing, we have tried to accommodate them. But under the growing problem of shortage of housing, it's not going to be easy in the future.
That's not quite the state's view. The Department of the Environment thinks that sites are the answer and says that gypsies who choose not to live on sites will have opted out of any state aid. But there aren't enough sites, and there aren't enough transit pitches for gypsies passing through. Until there are, the department says officious harassment should stop. Gypsies should go on being asked what they want, and local authorities should help gypsies buy or lease land for their own use. Fine words, good intentions that paved the road to an illegal site under the flight path to London Airport, where we met Dora Stanley again. She wants to buy a bungalow with a plot of land for her family's caravans. She has the money. Twice already, local authorities have stopped her. Now, she's trying again.
I just like my own family on the back to give them some education, because this is the reason why we're going into this bungalow. Yeah. It isn't because of me and my husband. We can live now the way we've lived all our lives.
Are you going to be able to be allowed to have caravans parked around the bungalow?
Well, we're going to put in plan of admission and we're keeping our fingers crossed, you know.
What do you think our chances are?
Well, if it's like it's been in the past, none. But if the law changes a little bit and meets us halfway, we're willing to do what the council wants us to do to get my children on the back of that.
What reasons have councils given you before for not allowing you to park caravans on what would be your own land?
Well, why they haven't given us plan of admission, the reason they've told us, because the public doesn't like gypsies. And the council just doesn't like caravans anyway. Well, the public, or the council, whatever, doesn't like caravans and doesn't like gypsies because they paint us as villains.
One couple who have reached the end of the road are Chris and Emily Butler. Just 2 of the 50,000 gypsies, it's estimated, have moved into houses over the years. They brought up 8 children on the road. Some are still travelling, others have settled down. And the Butlers themselves have lived in a council house for 4 years.
How do you like living in a house?
Well, I don't mind it myself, but the missus, she don't fancy it all that good, you know.
I shall never make a home, Walla.
No?
No, never. No.
Why not?
I ain't been used to it. I'm just a travelling blood. I just can't settle. They'll never stop travellers anyway, don't matter who they try.
Do you spend much time actually in the house, or
No.
No?
Oh, most of my time, all day, I'm out the back with my little grandson. Yeah.
We're never here over the
They're
weekend.
stuffy to me. I can't breathe in them, you know, properly. Overnight, I sleep with the bedroom window open all night. Yeah. I must have fresh air. I'd never survive if I didn't.
From tent to caravan to house, the whole gypsy experience in one man.
Because when you get married gypsies, they have to start from scratch, you know, work your way up. We had a tent, a scissor grinder, and an oily pram. We used to have a bell tent, you know, make its own tent every night. And we saved and saved and saved, me and the missus working. We bought ourselves a pony. I bought a set of harness, I bought a dray, and I built my own caravan. And from then we went on to 8 horses.
If you were going to go back to full-time travelling again, how would you like to do it?
I'd like to have my old horse and wagon again.
The roads ain't made for horses today like they used to be a few years back.
Yeah, then you wouldn't go on the motorways with a horse, would you?
There's no keep for them, I mean. Not like they used to be, anyway. That's all the old lanes and places that are fencing them all off. There's nowhere really to stop now, not with us.
To us, the house dwellers, it may seem a dream of impossible romance. To the gypsies, it's simpler than that. Just freedom, even for the butler's youngest daughter, Ruby.
Would you like to go back to travelling yourself? Would you?
Yeah.
Go back on the road?
Yeah.
Caravan?
Fresh friends, fresh people every day.
Do you think you might, or are you afraid that's just something you might dream about?
I think I will.
The fear of the gypsies and the hope of officialdom is that they're coming to the end of a road that stretches back a long way. There are 50 million of us, and it says something about our values and insecurities that we should feel such hostility and intolerance towards such a tiny minority who want only not to conform.
Do you think you will ever give up travelling?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're wondering why and how.
Right.
It's in a box. On the last travel I will go down, there's one of them ropes in your grave. And then if I can travel again, I dare say I'll go over the worms, won't I? I'll still be travelling.
Ruby, you tell fortunes. Do you think that the gypsy way of life that will go on?
Yeah, it will. Well, my great-grandmother and their great-grandmother, they had horses and wagons. I think it'll go on for a terrible long time. I think when the gypsies finish, I think that's when the world will finish.